Okay, let's get started. All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the Amherstburg Freedom Museum's Black History Series presentation, Mapping Ontario's Black Archive, a Conversation. Today's speakers are Dr. Cheryl Thompson and Dr. Karen Cyrus. In 2022, Dr. Cheryl Thompson joined performance at X University at the rank of assistant professor. She was previously faculty in creative industries 2018 to 2021. She's the author of Uncle, Race, Nostalgia, and the Politics of Loyalty, and Beauty in a Box, Detangling the Roots of Canada's Black Beauty Culture. In 2021, Dr. Thompson was a recipient of an Ontario Early Research Award titled Mapping Ontario's Black Archives Through Storytelling. This project aims to catalog Ontario's Black archival collections and through ethnographic interviews with the province's creative community, collect stories about the collections that will culminate with a public exhibition curated by Dr. Thompson and her research team, which includes postdoctoral fellow Dr. Karen Cyrus. In addition to publishing in academic journals, magazines, and newspapers, Dr. Thompson has also appeared on numerous podcasts and media platforms in Canada and internationally. Dr. Thompson holds a PhD in communication studies from McGill University. She previously held a Banting postdoctoral fellowship at the University of Toronto's Centre for Theatre, Drama, and Performance Studies and the University of Toronto's Mississauga Department of English and Drama. In 2021, Dr. Thompson was named to the Royal Society of Canada's College of New Scholars, Artists, and Scientists. Presenting alongside Dr. Thompson is educator, researcher, and musician Dr. Karen Cyrus, who is also a postdoctoral fellow at X University. Dr. Cyrus has a Bachelor of Arts in Language, Literature, and Social Sciences from the University of West Indies, Mona, a Master's of Arts in Applied Linguistics from York University, and a master's degree and PhD in ethnomusicology. Some of Dr. Cyrus's publications include Me Too in Kingston, Musicological Considerations of the Creative Music City Maestro, Breaking the Silence and Stopping Race, Race Content and Communicative Activities in ESL Literacy Computer Courses, and Metaphors and Music Making. So very impressive on both their ends. So following today's presentation, I'm going to be sharing a list of suggested resources on our Facebook page, and they've been provided by Dr. Thompson and Dr. Cyrus so that you can learn more. There's also going to be a Q&A at the end of their presentation, so just type in your questions in the comment section and I'll read them for you. You can also raise your hand if you would like to ask them a question directly. And I also, again, ask that everyone please mute themselves and mute their mics and turn off your cameras while our guests are speaking. And again, I want to thank Dr. Thompson and Dr. Cyrus for sharing information about their very significant projects. So I'm going to pass it over to the two of you. So thank you once again, and let's get started.
Okay, thank you so much for that introduction. First of all, thank you so much, everyone, for coming. I know many of you, through my work in the field, you heard about this project and you might have wondered what the project was all about. What is the specifics? If everyone who joined can mute their mic, that would be really appreciative. So here's the opportunity today to kind of get a glimpse about what the project is really all about outside of what was announced publicly. So today's conversation is really going to address a few things. First, obviously, we will introduce ourselves. You will get a little bit of an overview of some challenges in the field. There will be an overview of the project itself. Then we're just going to give you an example of sort of what we've discovered so far from the work that really Karen has done since joining me in this project. And then we will engage in a Q&A. So what I thought I would do to begin is, even though we were given an introduction, I thought we would maybe in our own voices kind of also give an introduction. And I know for myself, I'm not going to go over my bio and all the accomplishments, although they should be recognized. But what I will do is kind of just give you a sense of how I even came to this work, because I'm not an archivist. I did not go to school to study information sciences. I actually didn't even, during my MA work, I never even went into an archive. So I didn't really enter archival work until my PhD. And it was in that journey doing that work where I couldn't believe just how, like, the dearth of proper cataloging of Black collections, the lack of information I seemed to be able to get when I asked questions about Black collections. So the process of getting a PhD was also me realizing that I seemed like I was fighting a structure. The whole time I was doing the work, I was also fighting certain institutional structures around archiving. And it made me realize, one, I'm a very resilient person. So it made me think how many people experienced this and just left and never did the work. And I remember reading some books from other Black Canadian authors where they pointed to the same frustration in the archive. They would comment in the book about how they couldn't find this and they couldn't find this. But then I would think to myself, but they never did anything about it. Like, they would tell people of their frustrations, but they never decided to fix them. I just said to myself, once I got through my PhD, I wrote my first book, I wrote my second book, I decided, you know what? The other project, by the way, I'm writing a third book. So this project is actually the fourth book. But I decided that this was going to be actually probably the lifelong work, to do something about the archive, to fix the Black experience in the archive, and to do that in a way where I'm not judgy. I'm not judging anyone. I'm not criticizing. I actually want to work with the archive based on my experience and the knowledge that I have of the field. So that's really the backstory to how this project even came to be. Because since working with Karen, who will speak after me, I think there's also been a realization, like, how did someone come up with this project? Like, where did the idea come from? Because it's just so, it's kind of an out the box project. And I'm not saying that to brag or gloat. It's just facts of where would someone come up with this idea? And it was 10 years of experience that led to the project. So with that, let me just pass it to Karen to say a few words.
I would also add, Cheryl, Dr. Thompson, that you are a visionary. You are a visionary. So that's how that idea came about. And I was drawn to this project because of the potential that I saw in it. My work has been focused on giving access and bringing access to Caribbean content. I did so early on, many years ago, by collating music and incorporating it into the music curriculum for children in elementary school and high school. And that has stuck with me. I have been in that collecting drive. I am not a hoarder, but hoarders unite. This, this job is about collecting stuff.
Yeah.
And I just love it. I love looking at the pictures. I
Yeah.
love saying, I like the connections that we make. And even more than that, I like and I am passionate about what this will do.
Yeah.
From what I have seen so far, it will change everything. And that's where I'm going to stop.
And understand, Dr. Cyrus isn't even exaggerating. So with that, we're going to take you through sort of the first off the groundwork, the questions, the issues. Then we're going to go into explaining the project.
Excuse me, could we have everybody turn their camera off so we could see the speakers?
Yeah, that would be appreciated.
Thank you
so much. Yeah, if you can turn your camera off. I know sometimes people like to be seen, but it's really important that they see us speaking as well. So if you just joined, can you please turn your camera off? Mute yourself and turn your camera off. That would be appreciated. Okay. We're still waiting for the camera to go off there, but you'll get it. So what we want to do here, I'm not sure if you can see, I'm not actually sure what you see on my end.
I
If you
can see
see
the map, the challenges in the field of Black Canadian studies.
just the map.
And I can see both you and Dr. Cyrus, and I can see that slide with the map.
Okay,
Okay,
and do you see any other text?
Yes, the current state and the aim.
And then do you see anything else?
Yes, there's points underneath each.
Okay, yes. So this is what I mean. So we had animations where we wanted this thing to be revealed, but using the Microsoft Teams, sometimes it just doesn't allow you to do that. So Karen, if you just want to speak to this slide in the absence of the animation that we wanted to do.
thank you. And there's something else going on my end. I must mention that the bar covers part of the text for me. So I'm going to try and remember what's under there and talk. So on this chart, what we have here is the problem. The problem.
Yeah, I'm just gonna send you the link.
Oh, if you can mute yourself if you just joined. Okay, go ahead, Karen.
Thank you. So what we have here on this slide is the problem. The problem is that there is little access to our Black history. There's little access to our collections. And because of that, and in addition, we might not, as a people, and I say we, might not have the know-how of how to find information about our history and about our people. What that has resulted in is a lack of representation. So when people are looking, when creators are looking to write stories about us or our curriculum, they don't know how to get to the information. What we aim to do is to solve this problem. And we're going to solve it, first of all, by the aim is for you to have easy access to Black collections. So if you want to write a story about some figure, you will be able to come to this database and find every time that figure, that subject, that topic, that problem is mentioned. And by doing so, and by going to each, they talk about a Boolean search. That means, you're able to spot the information. By doing so, and of course, in addition to this, training on how to extract the information, because, you can have easy access to something, but there still needs to be training. There still needs to be education around how to, about what we call information literacy. So this project will not only have the database, but we're going to be doing some knowledge mobilization. We're going to be doing some dissemination where we teach you how to extract the information. And we hope by doing this, by creating this database and by educating our people on how to get the information, that more content will be created. And by more content being created, we will have more representation. We will be seen in this Canadian story that's out there right now. Right now, not so much, but after this, we hope that we will be more visible and that our contributions to nation building will be recognized.
Yes.
Thank you.
And really to add on to that, we're kind of seeing this project, even though this project is obviously taking place at a university, we kind of see the outcome of this project being applicable to every level of education, from primary, secondary, college, university, and beyond, business world, nonprofit. Like, we're literally trying to create almost, I was in a meeting and somebody called it a bridge. We're trying to be the bridge that connects these collections, these museums and archives with people, communities, history, places, right? And so that people kind of really, a part of it is also demystifying the archive and taking away that sense of, A lot of private citizens feel like they don't want to go into an archive because they feel like they don't have the expertise. And really, if you have vision, if you have hands, if you have a mind, anybody can really go into the archive. Even if you don't have vision, there's ways for you to still encounter the archive. So it is really what we're trying to do is almost be PR people for archiving, and also getting more Black, racialized, and Indigenous, LGBTQ plus, all the people who have been kind of put off by collections to free themselves to realize that you can go into an archive and see yourself, but you're going to have to look for yourself. This project, focusing on Ontario's Black community, is going to make it easy for you to find yourself. That's really what we're trying to do, so that you don't have to experience what myself, Dr. Cyrus, and so many others for the last 20 years have had to go through. So we want to show a quick video here, and it's from the Ontario Black History Society's campaign from last year. Man, that was 2 years ago now. Hashtag Blacked Out History. And I think it kind of just really illustrates the level of learning that goes on currently in schools related to Black history, and why this project is really aiming to shift this narrative.
I'm not hearing anything. Do you have to share the sound? Cheryl, I'm not hearing anything.
No?
Oh,
No,
I
I'm
can
not
hear
hearing anything.
I can hear it.
Yeah, I hear it. I hear it fine.
I don't hear anything, but
It's okay because there's really no audio, it's just music. So even the visual, it's just fine.
okay.
Yeah, even if it's just a visual, there's really no audio. If you can mute your video and your audio, you just join. Yeah, apologies if you couldn't hear it. It literally, it's just an instrumental, so the audio wasn't that important. What was really important is the message of that visual. That if you black out what's in history books and just leave the content that is supposed to be about Black people, it still sadly seems like exactly what it was when I was a kid. I know I look young, but 40 years ago when I started school, it seems like not much has changed. So I think that tells me that there's still a lot of work to do. We're still in a state where there isn't equal measure given to Black populations, Black community, Black history, as there should be. Because while, yes, there is a large percentage of the Black community who arrived post 1967 and has continually arrived post 1967, there's a large swath of history that goes back to the 18th century. And some would actually say we need to go back to the 17th century, where you can locate Black history in Canada. So it kind of begs the question, if you can locate Black history in Canada going back to the 17th century, why, when you black out the textbook and you just look for Black history, it's like 3 lines? Something's wrong, right? Something is clearly not what it should be. And so that's really what this project aims to address. And so moving to the next slide. Not again. And so mapping Ontario's Black archives, building an inventory through storytelling. That is what the project is titled. I came up with that title, by the way. I think it already sounds like a book, doesn't it? I'm very big on titles because in my world, I feel as though the title is like the vision. And once you have the vision everything you do in terms of your work is actually living out the vision. And so if the title is off and then the project seems like it's a hot mess, I actually think it's because the vision wasn't clear in the title. And so this title speaks to exactly what my intentions were with the project itself. And I'm really upset that I can't do my animations right now. It's like part of the animations, it's the big reveal. So you're just gonna miss some of that as I go through the slides, but it's okay. We're a live presentation, we're in it together. And so, oh, the animations are back. Oh my goodness, I'm so excited. Okay, so this is a little overview of the project, okay? And so the first thing to the project, I thought you were back. Yes, the first thing to the project, it's a 5-year project. This is going to take around 5 years. I think it's important to say that because we're really just in the first part of it, right? This is like the first year of it. And I'm going to explain the 5 years in a bit. But what we're aiming to do first is create an inventory. And so by creating an inventory, that means we're going through every single town, city, county, region, from Windsor right through to Thunder Bay, and trying to figure out, just on a basic level first, like, where are we? Like, where are the collections, right? Like, everyone is always focused often on the big cities and the known collections, but there's so many other archives and little collections that actually have Black records, and often they just don't know what to do with them. So part of Dr. Cyrus's work has been reaching out to as many, some of you here might have received an email from Dr. Cyrus reaching out saying, hey, you're doing this project, can we be in communication? So that's actually the first step. The next thing that we're trying to do after this phase, and I'm actually going to start this process of recruiting grad students to help me with this portion, we're going to be doing a qualitative ethnographic survey of the creative community. Because one of the things that I've noted over the last few years is that often there's a lot of dance companies, theater companies, visual artists, even singers who use Black collections in their art. They engage with Black archives. And so I had the thought to myself, has anyone ever spoken to these people about their experiences in the archive and also how they've used the collection to create art or to create dance or to create theater? I don't think anyone has ever done that study to see how do creatives, when they go into the archive and they find something, how do they use it? And so that's going to be the second phase of the project. The next thing is to make recommendations to the province about
the gaps, right?
Yeah, about the gaps, exactly. It says someone's taken control. I don't know who did that. Take that back. Someone just took control of the slides. It's very bizarre. But that's what we're really trying to do. Before I go on to the next slide, it's very bizarre, someone did that, is that we want to make recommendations to the province. We want to say to the province, here's what we found. And here's what we think the issues are, the gaps. And here's how this project can then be used as a template for other groups to consider. And then the next thing we want to do is to write a book. I think this is clearly apt for a book to be written. And then after that, in tandem, the book is probably going to come much later, but we really think that the project is going to culminate in some kind of public exhibition. Now, the reason I'm sounding a bit vague about that is because that's years from now. That's year 5. That's like the capstone of the project. But the public exhibition for me is going to be a combination of what are some main things that we found from the archive, right? In putting the inventory. And then what is the stories that we got from the creative community around how they use the collections? And then we put those two things together and share that with the public. And to me, that's where the project is really creative. because I don't think anyone's ever thought to do that in a public facing kind of way. I've heard of people doing it through naming projects, and I know a lot of archives have had naming projects where people submit things and they try to solve problems, but no one's ever thought to really create a public exhibition. And so that's really what I'm trying to do with this 5-year project. The next thing is what I want to take you through is basically a real detailed, I'm kind of giving away the goods kind of, but it's okay, because as we had this discussion, Dr. Cyrus, I just felt it's really important, I think at a certain point, once you've won the grant, okay, we won the grant, to share with the public your methodology to an extent. What is your plan now that you got the grant? What are you going to do? And so I really wanted to just share with everyone what the 5-year plan actually looks like, to kind of take away the mystery around what the project is. So the first step of the project, year 1, is that where we are today. We're building the inventory. We're trying to have outreach with the community. That's why we're here talking to all of you. We're hoping to engage in a shifting of the narrative around archival collections. And Dr. Cyrus is really doing a lot of this work, establishing what are the knowledge gaps. I think everyone who's here should think about what are your personal knowledge gaps around Black community, around Black history, right? And think about how if you have those gaps as an individual, the archival record also has those gaps. And so we're trying to establish what those gaps are so that people actually know. Often in your life, it's just like a blind spot. Sometimes you have a blind spot and you don't know. Someone has to point it out to you. So we're actually taking the time to do that, to just point it out. Here are the blind spots. The next thing is, in year 2, and we're kind of at the beginning stages of doing this work, we're collaborating with some user design experience teams. We're in conversation to build an accessible digital inventory and focus on accessibility. So what became very clear in this last, 6-7 months working on the project was that the inventory that we create has to mirror the same coding and the same descriptive headings as archives in the province, so that it's actually easy for you to seamlessly bring in what we produce to your archive. So we are trying to use the same language that archives in the province are using, so that it will be very easy to incorporate. If we don't use the same language, then it might be something that can't really be taken up by a wide swath of archives. The next thing is that we want to migrate the inventory to a website that is accessible to the public. And in doing that, making that accessibility possible, understand we are not creating an archive. So people have often asked that. We don't have no time for that, right, Dr. Cyrus? No time. So what we are doing, and I like to describe it as we are the hotels.com of archiving. Okay, that's what we are. We're hotels.com. We're Travelocity. Just think of all those websites that you book trips. That's what we're doing. We are basically creating a place, a portal where you can go. And if you're looking for a place, say you want to know, does Aurelia have any Black collections? We're here to help you. And we will show you what's in Aurelia. And we will provide all the information. That's what we're doing. We're not creating an archive. That's really important to understand. Next thing, we're going to gather the stories. I'm starting that process. So then let's move on. Year 3 is by year 3 in this project, all the inventory stuff, all the thing, it will be done. And then we move on to talking to the creative community. And that's going to be a process. One of the things that's come out of COVID is that I've really upped my game in terms of technology, and I'm sure all of us have. We've just got like a accelerated push when it comes to technology. Because when I first envisioned this project, I had envisioned actual interviews, like physical interviews with people. And then I thought, I don't even know how I won the grant because that's just not even feasible. If you think about it, that is not even feasible. So I'm not doing that anymore. The plan is, with the help of a series of grad students, we're going to create a really in-depth survey that is going to allow for semi-structured comments. So a semi-structured interview format and a survey with designed questionnaire. So questions that we will design, and then the open-ended. And we think that doing it that way will allow us to send it out to hundreds of people, as opposed to doing the personal one-on-one interview. Maybe we could have interviewed 20, maybe 50, but it would have taken a really long time to get the schedules and get people, right? So stay tuned. If you are a creative, I'm looking for you. We're going to come looking. And if you have any, we're also going to put out a call if you know of listservs, if you know of associations with creative people, if you know of any of that. Literally in a couple of years, look for me, because I'm emailing and I'm going to ask you to circulate the survey, because it's really going to be a community effort to get this information. Year 4. That's when we're going to transcribe, code, interpret the survey. And I'm an academic, so I know how to do that. And I will also be hiring more people to help me with that process. That's when the actual database that's going to be publicly accessible is really going to launch. That's how long it's going to take. I say that to people to adjust your expectations for this project, because research takes time. It's not something you rush. And so we're looking at a couple years from now before you would actually see the inventory itself, and the public site would be ready to go. That's when we're going to start writing our recommendations. We're going to plan the public exhibition. And, I'm hoping to secure rights to show images and documents. And so that's a process that's going to start in year 4. It's all going to capstone in year 5 with the recommendation, submitting the manuscript to an American or Canadian. I like to support my Canadian publishers, so I'm thinking Canadian here. And then we launched the public exhibition. I'm saying here in the slide that it would be on X University's campus, but to be honest, I'm very open at that stage. So if somebody wants to keep in touch and is here and is saying to themselves, I would love to host that exhibition in my gallery space, please get in touch, because we can start those conversations now. Because I think it's really going to be important for me to share the findings by year 5 in public, not in a virtual format. Like, I really want to be in a public space with people and just everybody in community, and being able to talk and share and seeing the images and seeing the story. Like, I'm already envisioning this. We have cutouts of like pull quotes from things that people said, and then you have an image, and we might even have the real person if they're around, lineage. Like, I'm a very creative person, so I'm already envisioning what this is going to look like. So stay tuned for 2026. Bookmark your calendar. And so if we keep it rolling here, Karen, if you want to speak to this slide.
Are you on the next slide, or are we on the same slide with the map? We're on the same slide with the map?
No. I've moved to the next slide. Can you see?
No, I'm still seeing the. What's going on with this thing? I'm still seeing.
Can the audience see?
I can see it, yes. Categories within collections.
Yes.
Okay, I'm not seeing.
I see some thumbs up. I'm not sure, Karen, why you're not able to see.
I don't know. This is strange. Let me see if I can.
Yes, I haven't seen anything from the beginning either, almost. It's really random.
Yeah.
Who can see and who can't see.
I was able to use the slide control to go forward. So I'm now on the page. But
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so you can see.
I can now see.
Okay, maybe the audience, maybe you have to get this beside the sound, the slide control.
Yeah, this is, yeah.
For anyone, for anyone interested, this is being recorded, as I mentioned to you, and it's being uploaded to our website, YouTube, and Facebook page. So if anybody does want to see it, I can see everything that you've presented and heard everything. So
Okay.
it will be uploaded to our pages for everyone to see.
Okay, perfect.
All right, great. Thank you for that clarification, Marie.
No
And
problem.
and so just to piggyback on what Dr. Thompson has said, we've really been very careful in how we are collecting this information because as Dr. Thompson had said, we want to make sure that it can be easily used and integrated into archival systems. So for me, that meant as I am harvesting and getting all the files, I am putting it in a structure that follows rules of archival description. And that's very important. We're getting support for that. And we're learning along the way some of the things we need. I'm very open about going to archivists and saying, look at this, what do you think? I need some negative feedback. You know why? You grow when you get negative feedback. They say the wise man loves negative feedback because it makes you better, right? If everybody just says yes, yes, and there's something terrible wrong, that's not good. So the negative feedback is good for me because it makes it better. And so what we've found, and I'm looking at the screen that says categories within collection. It's a green chart, and there are several rows. On each row, what we have is a category of the type of ephemera and the type of uh, artifacts that we have in the archives. And what we have here is an aggregate. That means all of the various types from all the archives that we've been to so far. This is consistently what we've found. And what I have found is that, of course, each archive, each type of archive has different categories. So I found that archives like Amherstburg, they have family histories, they have Facebook, they have online presentation through Facebook, they have newsletters and various ways in which they engage with audience, and which is very, Amherstburg does that so well. As I'm sure you know, and that's why you're here today. And I am just, as I said, we're presenting here all of the various categories. Now, how is this useful to you, and how is this useful to an archive? Well, what this shows you is the potential for what you can do with your materials. So family histories are usually basically family binders. Some archives, some community archives call them family histories, some community archives call them binders. And so I find that community archives such as Amherstburg they typically have family histories around which the rest of the collection is built. The ebooks are one way of community archives to present an exhibition. It's almost like an online exhibition. So typically, and in the post this situation, you would some archives would have a collection and they'll create an exhibition featuring certain ephemera, certain articles that they have. I found that there are some archives that put together ebooks that do very much the same thing, and they have a collection of that on their website. Some archives also have educational resources, and and this is the third one, the educational resources are curriculum where they are now engaging with the schools and maybe home schoolers or anyone who wants to use the material for learning. So there are lesson plans and ways that children and even secondary school can integrate the material within their classes.
And if I can just chime in
Sure.
just quickly, I just also want everyone to know that right to date, we've collected approximately 2,800 records.
Yeah.
And that's not even halfway through. Like I feel like we're like 1/10 maybe, or maybe 20% into the work. And so I think that number at this stage should say to people that what we're probably going to end up with is a 5-digit number of some
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
right? And that 5-digit number is going to encompass everything that you see here in the categories. So you can think about how extensive that is and how diverse that is and how complicated then that is to think about. You know, to me, when I see this list, what I want people to ask themselves is, who collected all of these things in the first place before they even got to the archive? Like, who did it? Who took the pictures? And if you have family histories, that means we need to remove the narrative of one person that has been the issue in Canada around Black history.
Yeah.
Canada has loved to celebrate individual Black Canadians. Just last week, there was an amazing celebration of Eleanor Collins. They call her the First Lady of Canadian Jazz. And I watched the media reporting. They never mentioned anyone, like they never mentioned like Eleanor Collins, like what communities she was in part of, like the people that she would have co-collaborated with, the people that she would have went to church with, the family, the places where she would have ate at. Like, I think it's really important to think about this archive as trying to do that, to create a sense of community and embeddedness that isn't just the narrative of one. Because when you have the narrative of one person, it makes it seem like a community is transient. And we're just not transient. We've been here a long time. And so these are kind of the records. I just want to move on to the next slide so we get everything in on time. And so here's the dates. And so here's what I showed you, what I said we were going to do in year one. Hopefully you can see it. Karen, maybe if you want to advance your slide, maybe you can see what I'm showing you here. It was kind of the same thing in that circular thing, but here's basically what we've done. Like we're in the process of doing the first three. We did that. What we're doing now and what's left to be done in this first year before July is basically to really pinpoint those gaps. Like, I think when I say pinpoint those gaps, I mean create a document that says, here's what's missing in each, here's what we see as some of the stumbling blocks in every single archive and collection that we've looked into. And we want to be able to provide that to each archive, because I think that too is kind of a resource that you might not be able to get. It's sort of the user experience report that you often don't get as an archive when you devise your collections. You really don't know all the time how people experience them. We're hoping to provide that report. And then we're getting some funding for building the infrastructure. Year two, this is really what's left to do, to move on to year two and to really start to think about how we were going to present this data. Because I think that's a question that some people might have had coming into this. How are they going to present the data? Like, what are you going to do? Like where is it going to be accessible? All those questions are questions that we're working on. So if anyone here has any suggestions, feel free to get in touch, because many of you I've actually been in touch with. I've seen the names. For those who I haven't been, understand that we want to hear from you. We want public feedback. We want to engage with the public. If you yourself have questions or you have some suggestions for us, get in touch, because that's really what the aim of the project is. So we just want to wrap it up here. I want to say thank you to obviously the province of Ontario for the Ontario Early Researcher Award. I also want to thank X University's Office of the Vice President of Research and Innovation, who has assisted me in this work. You don't get a grant on your own. You actually work as part of a team. So the OVPRI office was really fundamental to me getting the grant in the first place. Here are those additional resources. If you can see the screen, the NFB, National Film Board of Canada, has a series of amazing documentaries that capture some of the histories we're talking about. I'm also giving a special shout out to the Archives of Ontario. I know some of you are here because you've made a lot of your collections publicly accessible via a wiki page. And I think that itself is such a great step forward to allow people to access images, especially from the Alvin McCurdy Fonds, on a wiki page. And you can kind of just zoom in and see at your will. Here are our contact information. Karen, I'm outnumbering you. We got to work on that. So you can see Dr. Cyrus's email if you'd like to get in touch, and understand Dr. Cyrus is doing the work. I am project lead, but Dr. Cyrus is actually doing the work. So if you have some questions, tips, advice, get in touch with Dr. Cyrus. She more so than even me, because I'm just going to like pass it on to her anyway. But here's my contact. I'm accessible. As you can see, I love talking about this, and I'm just really excited for the potential for the project and where it's going to go in the coming years.
Sounds good. And I'm excited to be a part of the team. I find it's an honor. I can't stop talking about it, and really enjoying the ride. Thank you, Cheryl, for this vision. And thank you, Lorraine, for having us here. Lorraine?
Yes.
It was my pleasure. I'm so grateful to both of you for sharing this very important work.
Yes, yeah.
You go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, so we're glad to take questions now. I don't know if I should stop presenting. Maybe I can get out of presenter mode.
Sure. And so if anyone has any questions, they can write them in the comment section, or if you raise your hand, I'll call on you and you can address them directly. I guess while we're waiting for the first question, I'll ask one of my own. You'd mentioned the Archives of Ontario and engaging with them. I was wondering if you could speak to any other archives or museums that you've worked with?
Yeah, Karen, do you want to handle that one?
Yeah, sure. So I've been to quite a few, and I'm taking out my list here, and I must say, Sean Smith, shout out to Sean. He has been amazing. All the people of Archives of Ontario, and I must say, not only Archives of Ontario, but everyone has been really very receptive towards me, and I really appreciate that. So I've been to Archives of Ontario, Simcoe County, Matthew Fells, hey, the MHSO,
Multicultural Historical Society
of Ontario.
Of Ontario.
Yes. The Heritage Trust, Guelph, of course, Amherstburg, Chatham, Kent, Sheffield, University of Western Ontario, and a whole list of others. And I am just overwhelmed by the warm reception that I've been given. And I'm really very grateful. Looking forward to seeing so much more. We've identified close to 100.
Yeah.
If not more. Archives that I still have to come knocking at the door. The last one I went to was Guelph, and that's Mr. Sassour, so nice, Curtis. Very welcoming, and I really appreciate that. It will make our work go that much faster. Thank you.
Yes,
Wow.
and I would say that that list is just going to keep growing.
Yes, it is.
Amazing. We have another question. Patricia, you've raised your hand if you want to go ahead.
Hi, should I turn on my video, or is voice okay? Whatever.
No, yeah, if you want to, sure.
Okay.
It would be nice to see your face.
Hi, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation today. I am floored about this incredible, and congratulations on this grant. I wanted to come here because I'm overwhelmed and excited about this project. I'm a Canadian historian. I'm trained doctorate, and I wanted to tell everybody, I want to tell you, Dr. Thompson and Cyrus, that my entire education, even during my PhD, we never learned Black history.
Yeah.
I think, you know what I mean? I think that's a really important point. I often say this to my students. I am a PhD in Canadian history, and I did not learn Black history. I had to learn it myself, right? No one, you know what I mean? I had to dig on my own, which it says volumes, really. So I did want to say that. Okay, so I'm actually really excited in the sense that, you know, your focus is on Ontario, and I'm thinking about, you know, how you were talking about that a lot of Black history we can trace back to Black Canadian history, 17th century. And we know that with, you know, with several important historians like, you know, Winks and Walker, you know, Walker on Black Royalists.
Yeah.
So my first question is, so is your research also, you know, part of mining the sources that, you know, for Cooper, you know, Cooper, I should say, you know, how these historians have sort of already taken some of, but even when you read it and you think about their bibliographies and their footnotes, you could feel that they were like, oh, I found this piece, I found this piece.
Yeah.
So that was one. So I'm wondering if your project includes kind of amalgamating all of that history as well. And the other thing I want to say is that I'm actually working. I received a grant on doing boxing history in Ottawa, and what I have discovered, it is very much about the Black community and the Indigenous community, actually, and now it's sort of expanded to boxing in Canada. So I do want to get in touch with both of you about that, and I'm creating a digital archive as well. So there's that, and boxing is one of those. It seems, and it you know, I'm doing this research. I went into from boxing, but this is a history of Black history in our country.
Yeah, absolutely.
and it dates to the 19th century. So I'm just wondering, you know, how big, where do you know, how elastic is all this? Sorry, it's a long question. I'm not.
Yeah, no. I don't worry. I as someone who goes on tangents, I followed every tangent that you went on. Okay, so to the first part about, like, you know, how are we going to engage with sort of I would say, like, the people who've been writing Black history since 1970, or 71, I think Winks is from 1971. I think it's really important to understand that Robin Winks was a white American who was interested in Canadian history, came to Canada and stumbled on Black people, and then decided to make that his journey. And why I have to say that is because that is still the considered the canonical text on the Blacks in Canada that was written by a white American. So he's twice removed. And I think the fact that that still remains for many people, the canon, it just speaks to so many issues. And if we think about what came after that in the 70s and the 80s, there was not a lot, but there was text. And then, of course, you mentioned Afua Cooper, and especially the hanging of Angelique. That was, I guess, now in the early 2000s. The truth is, a lot of what we're trying to do is to probably fill in their footnotes, not retell the story that they've already told. Right. And also fill in and understand, because this is an Ontario funded grant, we're only focused on the province of Ontario. We're not focused on the rest of, that's the next grant. And I've actually already been, because the next grant, if you can imagine it, would have to be me in collaboration with other teams of researchers across the country. I wouldn't be able to do that work. So it would have to be a team in Nova Scotia, a team in PEI, a team in Quebec, a team in Alberta, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, BC. It would have to be a team and a multi-year grant. But this is the template for that to actually be possible. And so that's really what we're trying to do. And so to your second point, I guess, about, like, sort of what I would consider now, like, what you're describing is almost like a micro history of a larger history, right?
That's
because there's like the Black history of Ottawa, and then this part of it that you would maybe not connect and not see it as part of it, but it is part of it. And we're trying to document that too, right? Okay. Even now, I know, Karen, looking through the inventory, we've already found so many stories about baseball in Chatham. like everyone has known about obviously the Negro Baseball League and that there were teams here, but we're finding like granular like newspaper articles that I know I've never seen before in collections through Southwestern Ontario. That to me is like the sub story to the story. And, you know, I kind of see this project as branches on a tree. Like it, you don't know where it's going to go, and you don't know how many branches there's going to be. All we know is that the main trunk, if we stick with the analogy, the main trunk is that we're trying to map Ontario's Black archives. And then wherever it goes, it's kind of like wherever it goes, right? I mean, so to your point, I think that so many people could graduate with PhDs in Canadian history and never read a book or learn anything. It just speaks for itself. I actually don't have anything. And then at the same time, I should say, concurrent to that, you have this project. So I wonder how Canadian historians are trying to correct the dissonance.
Exactly.
Because if the argument is true that there is no Black history, how could this project exist?
How are not every Canadian historian in Ontario not listening to this talk? That's what I would like to know. Thank you.
To me, I'm just asking. It's like it actually doesn't make any sense. If that's the argument that Canadian historians are working with, generally speaking, because there's a whole swath who are not, but there's a lot who say there's no Black history in Canada, it's insignificant. Well, then how could I do this project? It actually, and so I'm waiting for crickets, probably. They don't know, they don't have an answer. And so that's the wall that we have to start to break down. And for those persons to understand that Canadian history, as you've learned it, actually just ignored a whole bunch of people. Yes. While it was telling the story, right?
There's that perpetuation. Like if I'm teaching, I'm a professor at Carleton. If I'm teaching that, I mean, what am I teaching? If I'm just one example of, right? So if I have,
but again, it speaks again to the blind spot. I really want people to understand. I'm not calling for revisionist history. Right. I'm not saying change what it is that we've been learning. I'm saying while you've been learning that one, I thought about this the other day. You know what it would be like? It would be like you looking out your window and saying, I looked out my window, I see everything. But you're just looking at one window, one perspective in your house. You have other windows on other sides of the house. So you actually can only see what's outside your window. You can't see what's happening on the other side of the house, even though it's connected to that same neighborhood. To me, that's what this project is trying to do, to just get people to see out other windows of the same house. Like, we're not saying burn down the house. We're just saying there's other windows in the house to see the same neighborhood from.
And another theme in this project, which is why I'm so excited to hear from you, Patricia, is that it's also about collaboration. It's also about where, everybody, it's like spinning wheels everywhere. No, we need to come and work in concert, right? And so we're trying to get everybody on the same page, literally, so that we can move forward with our history. Because we are also a part of the history, right?
It's imperative, and the work is imperative, and archives are imperative. So thank you both, and I'll be in touch via email.
Absolutely.
Please, yes.
Sounds good. And say, Maria, I see Maria's here. You'd have a question.
Yes, my question is brief, but first I just want to say that this is the third project you guys are doing is brilliant, and I can't wait. Thank you so much for all that labor and effort. And I sort of identify, not in the ways that you would think, but I'm a scholar that is working on liberation in North America. I'm from Mexico, and it's the same thing. In Mexico, it's like, oh, there's people that think that there's no Black people in Mexico, so where's the history, right? And so, but I'm trying to argue that Black history in Mexico is Mexican history, and it's also part of the processes that connect the US, Mexico, and Canada together. Yeah. And so, and this might be like a weird question, but I know your project is like in stages up to stage 5, but maybe is there like a stage 6 where the Black Canadian Archive can connect to Mexican archives and US archives? And
Oh yeah,
And
I mean,
so,
Oh,
absolutely.
yes, definitely.
Yes. I mean,
Yeah.
look, we both said yes at the same time. Absolutely. Why not? But what I recognize is that, when you're doing a project like this that has never been done, so there's no template, we're trying to create the template. It's not going to be until the end where we can actually see those real points of connection elsewhere, right? Like right now, I'm saying yes, of course, but it's only going to be year 5 when I can actually say yes, of course, and here's what the points of connection actually I think are, right? Like at this stage, I don't fully know the extent of it, but absolutely, I think one of the things that archives also point to are various waves of migration and the movement of people. And if you understand the continent that is North and South America, obviously there have been people moving back and forth throughout the continent for more than, again, since the 1960s. Like we're talking about centuries of movement, and especially the entanglements then in between North and South with the Caribbean, Anglophone, Francophone, and Spanish speaking Caribbean. It's like there's lots of movement. I mean, I myself in my family lineage have family that moved to Panama at a certain point in my family's lineage in Jamaica. Lost touch. Who knows where those people are today? They could literally be anywhere, right?
Yeah.
So I think the possibilities are kind of endless. But what I've learned as a researcher, especially someone who's done multi-year grants, like I've had multi-year funding to do multi-year projects, you really don't want to put too much pressure on yourself at the start about what you're going to find and where it's going to go, because you just don't know until you get closer to that point.
absolutely.
But
No, thank you so much.
there have been, just to your point, Marianne, to add on to what Dr. Thompson is saying, that there have been institutions looking at the transatlantic slave trade and where all of those persons went. And I seem to remember the Harriet Tubman, right? The Harriet Tubman Institute had a project like that, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that would be a place to connect with in terms of seeing, because I know that they have a Latin American section to that. So that would be a great place to see what is already being done in that area,
Yeah,
and
that's true.
collaborating. Hey, I miss collaboration. I am miss collab. No, I don't want to say miss. I am. I'm Dr. Collaboration, because that sounded like miss
Yeah.
collaboration.
No. That's good. That
But
it works. We
but
get
yeah,
it. We understand.
it's so important, and I'm happy you're doing that work, Maria.
No, thank you. And I'm just a fan of both of you. And if you need any help, reach out. I am currently here in Philadelphia, and I've just been following your work. So I'm very excited about the work that you're doing. So thank you.
Amazing. Yes. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Maria.
So to stay on your schedule,
Yes.
I want to be respectful of your time. We
Absolutely.
have two questions in the comment section, so I'll read them
Okay.
both, and that way you can address them. So the first one is, how will the process work of locating relevant archival materials in small, less professional and local archives? And then another question, which I can repeat to you once you've answered the first one. Where would you place this work in relation to having a Canadian Black archive? So I can repeat both if you
Okay, so
like.
to the first question about the smaller archives, maybe Dr. Cyrus, if you want to take that.
Well, we have a mandate on getting materials from archives with funding from the province, right, Cheryl? Can you?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So maybe you can speak to that. That speaks to that aspect of it, because
Yeah, I mean, the project, so the way it was sort of pitched to the province was that we would be looking for archives that have some element of public support, provincial support in some capacity. So to the smaller community archives, I mean, to me, I think, while those archives might not be mapped in terms of the inventory, they will be situated within the inventory in some capacity.
Yeah.
When we find out about them, like, I think that's the best way to answer that.
And I just want to add to that too, because some of these smaller inventories, and some of them are in churches, in people's homes. There is a way of incorporating them that I am aware of, but it would mean collaborating with a university department not to give them the material, but to have maybe someone who's interested in writing about it, right? And in
Yeah.
that way, it comes into the whole fold. So reach out to us. You have something, let us know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm ready for it.
Our mantra in life is just do it, and we always say yes.
Yes,
So if you want to reach out, do it, and we will
bring it on.
respond with a yes. Thank you so much. So
Right.
we're not turning anyone away. We're
No.
literally just taking in everything, and we'll figure it out. We'll figure it all out at the end. You know, like
Yes, and
it'll
it's just
and it'll
us to
all
be,
come
I just
together.
wanted to be transparent about the whole process so that
Yes.
you know, so that we understand how it has to go, right? So
Yeah. Yeah,
mhm.
and that's partly why I agreed to give this presentation, because I think people have wondered what is it that we're actually doing, and what is actually the plan, and how are we going to entangle with the archives. And so this was the first stage of that public engagement, again, like I said, that I set as a mandate for myself to share the project as much as possible. You know, it could be very well that in year 2 we have another meeting like this where I give you another update on how the inventory is going, how the early work on the survey is going, and where we see as areas that we've mapped out what creativity looks like in the province. Because I think it is so important because it's true. I know dancers who go into archives, use that work, and they create a show. They actually use the archive to create their performance. That never gets recorded anywhere. And I think that is really going to this project is going to get up leveled once we get to that stage, because I just know I'm going to be shocked and amazed and in wonder of the stories that I'm actually going to get about the inventory. So that's going to be exciting. What's the next question before we run out of time?
Absolutely. And by the way, you're welcome back anytime to give updates and present anytime. So the next question, the final question we'll have is, where would you place this work in relation to having a Canadian Black archive?
You mean like a physical space, like a permanent space that is for Black collections? Is that what the question is asking?
If the person who asked the question would want to elaborate, I don't want to speak on your behalf.
Mm-hmm.
Hello. So I asked the question.
Okay.
It's more like we don't have like a like a Canadian Black archive that's like the canon kind of thing, where we have a collections, either physical or not. It's
Mhm.
just something that we don't have. And so what you're doing obviously is like speaking to that.
Yeah.
But earlier you said like, that's not, you're not really, creating a Black archive.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, like, how you're thinking about, like, is that like a pathway to, or like adjacent to a Black archive? Like, how are you envisioning? Is it something that like with the work I'm starting to do, definitely going to reach out, because mine is more Thunder Bay sex work, Black sex work, interesting stuff. So I'm curious, like, how you're thinking about what you're doing.
Yeah. I mean, I actually wrote an article a couple of years now that was about, it was the one where I talked about different archives around the world. And in particular, the British context is actually a great model for us to think about, because the British context started, if anyone's ever seen Small Axe, which is the on Amazon Prime, it kind of speaks to where the archive started. Just quickly, because I know academics, we can ramble, but in the early 1970s, you have an influx of, well, it really starts in the 50s and the 60s, but you have an influx of Caribbean immigrants to London in particular. And what did they find? When their kids were born in the UK, British citizens, what they were learning in school was not Black history. So they just, as a community, started a community circle, of gathering and preserving their history. Then what happened? They turned that into an archive. They started collecting things from the community, from school. And so it started as a community Black archive. Like I can't remember what the acronym is, but it was like the Black something, West Indian something another collection. Today, that's a Black British museum. So from 1970s to today, it now transformed over the decades, publicly funded, because like the UK, we also follow a kind of public model, unlike the US, which is more often privately funded. It's now a museum itself of Black British history. So what I'm saying to you is sky is the limit in this case, but know that something like that takes decades, right? Something like that takes a project like this to prove efficacy. One of the reasons why any project doesn't get funded, it's not because it's not a good idea, or sometimes we think, oh, it's racism, and sometimes let's check that it is racism, but sometimes it's just not feasible. You haven't proven efficacy. You haven't shown that this can be sustainable. So it's in the framing of the project. And one of the things I've learned over the years of being successful with grants is that I've figured out how to make even the project that seems like it wouldn't be funded, I've learned how to make that funded based on feasibility and sustainability and a clear set of questions, and also a very clear set of how I'm going to engage with the public. To me, this project, I hope people here today can understand the magnitude, which I know Dr. Cyrus is on board with as well. This is literally the starting point for anything like that to even be possible.
And I just wanted to add to that very quickly that, for the person's question about the Canadian Archive and the example that you gave of what happened in the UK, it just goes to show that great things start small, because a similar thing happened in the United States with the Schomburg Research Center. It started off as one man collecting stuff. He just started, Arturo Schomburg, right, from a Puerto Rican. He was just collecting some. He had 10,000. And the New York Library said, hey, we think that this could be something. And now they have a huge building, a huge block.
That's right. I've done research there twice in my life. Absolutely. They also have an amazing basement with all these old photographs of jazz legends like Billie Holiday and Dizzy Gillespie that all went to the Schomburg, because it was like a community center as well in the 40s and 50s. So everything starts with an idea, and then everything from that idea comes hard work for many years. And then comes collaboration, and then comes community engagement, and then comes funding. So I see this project as following that same trajectory, right? So I think, just wait for it. I'm optimistic that it could happen in our lifetimes. Absolutely.
Amazing. Thank you both so much. I will just mention there was a question in the which, if there's no time, maybe this person can reach out to you directly, but they just wanted to know if there's a list of participants that will be put out there so people can keep updated on who's involved.
Participants, I don't know, like in what
so I think a list of archives and museums that have been participating with you. So their question is, will a list of participants today be kept so we might have get a shout out about any future updates? So
yeah, I mean, I think we would keep that until we were finished the project. We wouldn't really let the cat out the bag, so to speak, until we were done. Like that's what the public reporting to the province is going to include, all of that information at the end, though. Excellent. So you'll just have to wait for 2026.
But in the meantime, continue engaging with Amherstburg. I hope I'm pronouncing the name right. Continue engaging with them. I find that their audience engagement strategy is awesome. 10 out of 10, right? And so, Lorene and Mary Catherine will, I'm sure, find a way to keep everyone engaged and in touch.
Yes, and if there's any updates that Dr. Thompson and Dr. Cyrus would like to share, they're welcome to contact us, and we're happy to share it with our network as well. So, so we are out of time, but I again wanted to thank both of you. This was such an amazing presentation, and your work is so important. As you've seen with our audience today, they're very engaged. So thank you again so much. And Dr. Thompson and Dr. Cyrus have left their contact information as well if you do want to reach out to them. So thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you again, Dr. Cyrus and Dr. Thompson.
Thank you so much. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you for listening to us. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.